like this is it, guys. This is our last night of VBS. This is our last night for this video. And I'm looking forward to what Exodus 19 has for us as we're about to look and kind of wrap all this up with looking at God's presence being with Israel, God's presence staying with Israel, and why it's a big deal, why that even matters. So looking at presence, talking about presence, people's presence matters to us. And if you don't believe me, I remember being in like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, somewhere in there, and I had a birthday that was coming. And so in typical early 2000s fashion, I printed off these little birthday invitations for all of my friends, and I gave them out to people at school. I was sticking them in lockers and putting them in places. And then I don't know if everyone had plans or if just no one liked me or what it was, but come time for my birthday party at the bowling alley, bless my mom's heart, she was like calling people from church that we didn't even invite to see if they were free that day, just so there would be people at my birthday party. Now, if you want to talk about a humbling experience for a 7th grader, it would be that, because people's presence matters to us. The difference in having 5 people at my birthday party compared to 500 is a pretty big impact. It could be something a little bit more serious. Maybe you know somebody that is in a hospital or rest home right now. Do you know how big of an impact one single visit or one single phone call makes with people? Because it shows you matter. It shows that someone cares about you. It shows that someone hasn't forgotten about you. It could be the fact, maybe you're really into sports. When I was your age, I was really into sports. Let's say you've got the big game of the season. You've got districts or regionals or whatever it is. You show up and you're ready to go, and then you look around and coach isn't there. Well, obviously, he must have just had something better to do, and we say that real sarcastically. We're super frustrated, a little bit hurt, because of all the time that's been invested, all the preparation that's been invested. Or maybe it's your graduation and you look up in the stands and you see your entire family and they're all there with their smiling faces. It makes us feel good. And we can go back and forth all day. But what the point shows is it doesn't really matter where we come from or what our background is. Just as humans, as people, we love having someone else's presence there for us. We love having that to fall back on, and if nothing else, we at least notice the difference in when someone's presence is there and when someone's presence is not. And that is what Exodus 19 through the rest of the book is all about. If you want to sum it up in one word, if you want to sum it up in one theme, it is all about God's presence. And so where it begins, if you have a Bible, and at this point you've had 2 nights of fair warning. If you don't have a Bible, this is your own fault, and we're going to be flipping around a lot, and you're going to be lost. So I would run into the living room or wherever you keep your Bibles and get one quickly and turn to Exodus 19. Because as we get to this point, remember Exodus 14, they crossed over the Red Sea. So about 5 chapters worth of content is taking place from there to here. They begin their wandering in the wilderness. God is blessing them by giving them manna from heaven. He's even feeding them, sustaining them while all this is happening. And we get to chapter 19. And as we see that Moses and God have a little bit of an interaction, and he tells him towards the beginning of the chapter, we're looking at like verses 3 through 6. He tells Moses, I want to have a conversation with you, and I want to begin this covenant. I want to begin this relationship between me being God and you being Israel. And the way that we're going to lay out the terms of this covenant is up on Mount Sinai. You and I are going to meet, and we're going to lay everything out and iron everything out perfectly. And we're going to set the foundation of y'all's faith. They didn't even know that they had a faith yet. They didn't even know that they were Israelites in the way that we talk about Israelites yet. This was the beginning of all of that. And so Moses agrees, and they come to Mount Sinai. And what I love is you're open with me in Exodus 19 because you love Jesus and have your Bible with you at this point. And so when we get to verse 16, read it. It says, so it came about on the third day, when it was morning, there was thunder and lightning flashes and a thick cloud upon the mountain and a very loud trumpet sound. So that is there for a purpose. So that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And so when we look at that, we see that, we realize that God's presence was made explicitly clear. If it wasn't clear enough when He performed all the miracle plagues, if it wasn't clear enough when He parted the Red Sea, He said, I am coming to this place, and you're going to notice when I get there. You're going to notice when I show up. You know those people that walk in to a room or walk into a party and make sure that everybody knows that they're there? That is God on Mount Sinai. Thunder is bolting, lightning is flashing, everything, loud trumpets are going off. There is no question. There's no question of, well, maybe it's just a coincidence. There's storms rolling through. This is God, period. And all of Israel noticed. All of Israel noticed God's presence. And so Moses has relayed at this point what is happening, what he's about to do. He goes up, he ascends up this mountain, and that begins a 10, 11, 12, 13 chapter long conversation between him and God of laying out how they are going to have a relationship with each other. Imagine how important that would make us feel when somebody so much greater than us says, I want to have a relationship with you. Imagine how incredible that would feel when the most beautiful girl in the entire school that you have nowhere near the courage to walk up and talk to just comes up to you one day, seemingly out of the blue, and says, I want to have a relationship with you. Whether it is that or that person that you think is just the coolest person, they're so funny and awesome and I want to be friends with them so bad, but they kind of intimidate me at the same time because they're so funny and awesome, and they walk up and they say, I want to be best friends. Just out of nowhere. Take that and multiply it by about 1 billion. When the creator of the universe comes down from his lofty heavens to a people that are so undeserving and says, let's have a relationship. And I'm going to lay out exactly how we're going to do it. I'm going to lay it out so that you and I can draw closer to one another. And that is what chapter 20, 21, 20, keep going. All of that is God laying out the terms of this relationship so that they can just draw closer to Him. And then we get to chapter 32. Because just like in any relationship, any common relationship, and if I remember it correctly, any way that a middle school or high school relationship happens, that it doesn't take very long for somebody to mess something up, right? Because y'all are in the middle. Remember last night we talked about your 47 group, or 2 nights ago, we talked about your 47 messages that you have back with your significant other. It doesn't take too long for them to like someone's picture that was posted by somebody that you had a fight with 3 years ago and don't talk to anymore, and you like that picture and you aren't supposed to, and I'm just so angry with you, and you're not the person I thought you were, and what are we doing in this relationship? You know how all that mess happens because you're probably in the middle of it right now. Or at least you know people that are in the middle of it right now. It doesn't take long for relationships like that for somebody to mess something up. And believe it or not much of a plot twist, God wasn't the one that messed anything up. It was Israel. Because while God and Moses were up on Mount Sinai laying out the terms of what their relationship was going to be, how it was going to happen, and what it was going to mean, we get to chapter 32. And we see that now when verse 1, now when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and said to him, Come, make us a god, who we will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. And this is a story that a lot of us know pretty well of the golden calf being built, the golden calf being worshipped. And while God is up on that mountain trying so desperately to lay out a means of a relationship, his people are down below saying, yeah, it's taking a little bit too long, God. We're going to take matters into our own hands. We're going to do what we want, handle it the way we would like, and we're going to make us a good old golden calf. And as God realizes this, as God sees what is happening, I mean, he's omniscient, he's omnipresent, he knows, he sees everything. He comes to Moses, and if you're in chapter 32 with me, let's read verses 14 and 15. So the Lord changed his mind about the harm which he said he would do to the people. And then Moses turned and went down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, tablets which were written on both sides. They were written on one side and the other. Remember, we just hopped into the middle of a conversation between Moses and God. There's a little bit of some background there. That God said, Moses, do you not see what your people are doing down there? Just let me be. I'm going to go down there and I'm going to handle it. And if you know Old Testament God the way that I do, then the way that he was going to handle it was not going to be very gentle with these people that were defiling him, that had left his side. Pause. Not saying that Old Testament God is any different than New Testament God. I'm just saying that some of his attributes were better showcased. Resume. Okay. Looking at that, Moses is like, whoa, wait. If you can just give me some time, verse 14 and 15, if you can just give me some time, let me have a moment to kind of reconcile this, make this right, relay the message. Let me be the go-between. He said, these people are physical. We've been up here, but God, let me be the go-between. And so he goes down, and if we look at the way that all of this plays out in chapter 32, we see that Moses, at the end of the chapter, goes and kills about 3,000 people. He handles the situation, and he does so in a way that seems a little bit extreme. It most definitely showcases God's seriousness in the matter. And at the end of it, what we bring about is God tells them in chapter 33, when him and Moses reconvene, he says, I'm done. God says, I'm out. I'm not leading you anymore. You can take this land that I promised you because I promised it to you. And not so much about you, but I promised it to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And because of them, I'll fulfill my promise. Go in and take it, and there won't be any problem for you. And the verse 14 through 15 that I meant to read was out of chapter 33. So flip forward a chapter where verse 14 and 15 says, And he said, My presence shall go with you, and I will give you rest. And then he said to him, If your presence does not go with us, do not lead us up from here. In this next conversation that Moses ventures out to have with God, he says, we need you. And we're not leaving here without you, God, because, remember the beginning, what we talked about? Your presence makes all the difference. And so from that point on, that's where we see through the rest of the story of Israel that God dwells with them. At the end of chapter 40 of the book of Exodus, the very end of the book, we see that the tabernacle is built, that God dwells within that, and he goes with the people wherever they go. But this might be a deep thought, so I want you to think about this for just a second. Everything we do in our faith, everything that you're doing right now watching this video, everything we do in trying to have a relationship with God, everything we do in going to church, if you want to call it that, is all about having God's presence in our lives in this one and the next. That's it. At the end of the day, if you want to boil down our faith to the most simple, bare bones structure, it's all just about having God's presence. Because that's what heaven is. So many times we misread that verse that says that there are, in my Father's house are many mansions. That's actually better translated, in my Father's house are many dwelling places. And we say, heaven's going to be my mansion, and I'm going to have whatever I want there, and there's going to be 47 Xbox Ones, and I'm going to have all the Cheetos you can eat, and it's going to be the essence of heaven. The essence of being in God's place is just a state of being in God. Being with God. Being with God. And by his very presence, we can't look away. That's what we're told by all the prophecies, whether it be Revelation 4 or Daniel 7, any of them. And so thinking about God's presence, everything I'm doing in this life, everything you and I are trying to do in this walk of faith, trying to do just by being present at this VBS, is trying to attain, trying to get God's presence in my life. And that leads us to the biggest question that I can ask in this entire series. Do you have it? Do we have God's presence in us, in our lives, in our situation, because we can talk about how grand and great and star-spangled awesome that God's miracles of the plagues were. We can talk about how incredible it was that He parted the Red Sea. We can do that all day long. But if the God that did that isn't present in my life, it makes no difference. It makes no difference. And so I guess I'll ask, not only do we have it, but did we have God's presence at one time and then lost it? Because as you and I know all too well, if the story of Moses isn't a staple set of scriptures in the church, then Acts 2 most definitely is. And we know that upon receiving this gift that God has extended through baptism, we accept that through baptism. What He's offered, His grace, His mercy, we accept that through baptism. We know that there is something spiritually that takes place, as verse 38, the gift of the Holy Spirit is given. God's presence dwells within us, right? So do we have it? Maybe have we lost it? And I'll be honest with you, if we're sitting here and we're thinking through this right now, and you and I are thinking, well, I've never thought about it before. I don't really know. Do I have God's presence in my life? This is kind of hard. If we have to really ask, and we have to really search, we have to really think about it, then we might not find an answer that we're looking for. Because the way that we know if we have God's presence or not has a whole lot to do with what we're pouring into the relationship and what we're putting into the relationship. Because it's more than, God's presence is more than just a feeling. God's presence in our lives is more than just, yes, I know it's there because I was baptized this one time and I go to church every Sunday. It is this back and forth relationship of walking out of our idolatry, walking straight through obstacles that He divides on dry ground unharmed. It's walking through Him laying out the terms of here's how I want us to have a relationship. It's walking through a very similar spiritual pilgrimage that these Israelites just walked through. And it's day in and it's day out. And I'm sorry that I don't have any instant gratification, slap it in a microwave and have it in 5-minute answers of how we can have this presence and this relationship with God, but I don't think He ever designed it to be that way, because good things take time. My wife, Sarah, as I said, better than me in every way. Incredible. The first probably 20 people, whether it was at college or family or who it was, when I showed them a picture of Sarah and said, I'm dating that girl, gave me a funny look because they thought, you're kidding. She is just spiritual. I'm not going to spend time bragging about Sarah. Just imagine the most incredible person in the whole world, and that's pretty well her. It took me over a year to get her to date me. I remember the first date that we went out on. I remember the second date we went out on. And I remember the week that I was heartbroken when she never responded to that message that I sent. I remember. But I remember a year later when after much effort, a relationship was built and a relationship was kindled. It took time, guys. We want everything so quickly and we want it right now. And I understand because I'm of the same generation that y'all are, believe it or not. I am an impatient Gen Zer, just the same as y'all are. But if we want something that's going to matter, and if we want something that's going to have depth, and if we want something that we can trust and fall back on the way that God talked about in Deuteronomy, that we talked about yesterday evening, if we want something that's real, if anything, you're of a generation, we're of a generation that wants something that is real and that is genuine. It's not fake. It's going to take time. It's going to take investing. And if we look at Exodus chapter 19, if we look at the beginning of Exodus chapter 19, the beginning of this Sinai process, verse 1 through 9, as soon as this video ends, please go read it. We see that the way that we kindle that relationship, the way that we start that relationship, is by accepting the terms of His covenant and following. Simple as that. Accept the terms of His covenant. Listen to the way that He's told us He wants to have a relationship with us, and follow. And by doing that, it opens the gate. It opens the floodgates of everything that God has showed us that He's capable of in Exodus, and everything that He showed us He's capable in the lives of us as well as other people we're surrounded by. So at the end of this study, I guess the biggest question that we have to ask and answer is what are we going to do with all this? I'm looking forward to maybe meeting you one day, whether it be in this life or in heaven. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's been beneficial. I've grown from this study, and I hope that you have too. I just want to give one last thank you. I'm grateful for being able to be here and being able to be with you, and I hope that we can meet sometime. So I don't have anything else. I guess we will close out, and eventually my face will fade away into some kind of outro. So see y'all later.